If you're wondering if low libido and relationship satisfaction are connected, it's pretty common to be wondering if there's something wrong with your relationship. And I just want to start this video off by saying right up front that asking if your sex life or sex drive is normal is the single fastest way to kill intimacy. It's a total trap. And today, I'm going to explain why normal is actually a really toxic word and give you 5 better ways or different ways to think about your relationship satisfaction and sex. If we've not met before, my name is Oliver and I'm a couples therapist here in West Hollywood, California. And if you want some of my handouts that I give couples all the time in my private practice, the form to give me your email address is below. And if I'm really smart, I'll figure out how to put it up there. Couples that I see ask me pretty often if having sex once a month or twice a month is normal, or if it's okay that they fantasize about someone else in order to finish things off in the bedroom. And they want to know if whatever they're thinking is normal. And my answer is this: I'm not going to answer that question, because the moment I tell you something you do is normal or not normal, I'm validating the category of abnormal. So if I say whatever you're worried about is normal, then you're going to immediately wonder if the next thing you do is abnormal. Think about it this way: if you're sipping on a delicious cup of coffee on a Sunday morning, you don't normally ask yourself, did I take too long to drink this? Do I sip my coffee like normal people? You're more likely to just ask yourself if the coffee's good or not. But with sex, we kind of obsess over objective criteria, statistics, what the magazines say, what our friend says, and of course, what TikTok says, instead of focusing on whether it was fun. When your attention is on what's normal rather than what was enjoyable for you is the first trap here. So delete the word normal from your vocabulary. It just creates more anxiety and really doesn't help with connection and improving things in the bedroom. But if we're not aiming for normal, what are we aiming for? Well, sometimes the problem isn't sex at all. It's that you've forgotten how to play the game of sex. Imagine you get asked at the last minute to go to some swanky dinner party. If you're like me and have a completely unremarkable social life, you're going to have to dig through the closet to find your best outfit, perhaps that tie or the suit or the glittery number that you save for special occasions. You're going to have to make sure if it still fits or if it needs cleaning. And of course, you've got to shine the fancy shoes that you've not worn since that wedding 3 years ago. By the time you actually get to the party, you're probably very exhausted, slightly frustrated, and maybe a little bit excited. But the point is, the startup cost was too high for it to be really enjoyable. The infrastructure is in place for them to go out to the party. They don't really have to think too much about what needs to happen in order for them to get to this event. They just do it. Let's think about your sexual infrastructure, right? Most couples who are in a dry spell have completely lost this structure. It's not at all necessarily anything to do with desiring your partner. It's that the logistics have just become a nightmare. That sexy lingerie that you sometimes wear is still at the bottom of the hamper, and maybe you've forgotten the vocabulary of your partner's body, what they like, what they don't like, how to touch them in that special way. You're out of practice. This is the infrastructure. And because that infrastructure is missing, initiating sex feels like being invited to a swanky party at the last minute and then entering a really messy closet. It feels like an enormous project. So sometimes you just decide it's easier not to do it. So if you're stuck in a rut, maybe it's time to stop asking, do we still love each other? And start asking if you're ready for the party. Is the bedroom a place where you can actually relax and feel sexy time? But even if you have all of the equipment ready, the infrastructure set up, you still have to deal with initiating sex or responding to your partner's initiation. And most of us aren't setting things up to make that easier either. Okay, so let's imagine you've got the infrastructure, the lights are all set to sexy time, the red carpet outfit is ready, but you still aren't doing it. What could be the problem here? Well, it's likely because you're trying to switch from life mode, work mode, into sexy time mode instantly. And for most adults, changing your way of thinking and being from one status or mindset to another is very demanding. We have this idea that desire should just turn on and off like a light switch. But for most of us, sexual drive isn't a light switch. It's an actual process that is quite demanding. Think of your brain like a car on a highway. All day long, you're dealing with emails, the kids, the taxes, the chores. You're driving at 80 miles an hour, right? You've got to be fast, efficient, alert just to get through the to-do list and survive the day. Intimacy and desire happen at more like 10 miles an hour. So you need to slow down, be present, be in your body. So this transition is the most critical missing piece for most long-term couples. You absolutely need 20 or 30 minutes where you aren't doing anything. You aren't being a parent, you aren't being a boss, you aren't being an employee, and crucially, you aren't actually trying to have sex yet. And that leads us to one of the biggest mistakes couples make once they do finally get to the bedroom. So once you've slowed down and actually made it to the bedroom, some couples can make a big error because that mental engine is still on the freeway. Your brain finds it very easy to slip into being a judge on American Idol, right? And then we start to treat sex and intimacy like it's something that has got to be critiqued. During the workday, you're constantly running a checklist of what have I got to do? Did I do that right? Did I remember everything? Where are the kids due? What have I got to do? Did I pay that bill? You're going and going and going, and it's a cognitive process. It's a mental list. And if you enter the bedroom or an intimate moment still in that mental zone, it will translate to sex. How was my performance? Was it engaging enough? Did I do the right things? Was I performative enough? Was I quiet enough? How was our harmony? What if something's wrong with us? So maybe if you check all of the boxes and you pass that, you give yourself a 10. But if you miss one, you might think that sex is failing. And this is our fundamental human obsession with function. Because we live in a culture that tells us if we want better sex, we need to perform better. We need to deliver a stellar performance every time. And then we're engineering and overthinking sex rather than enjoying the process. So this mental bias towards function and performance is sometimes part of the problem. Overthinking can sometimes be a function of underfeeling. So if you're thinking too much about how your body's working, what it looks like to other people, if your partner's having a good time, you aren't feeling the sensations in your body. You're spectating, not participating. And whenever you're the judge, you're on the sidelines, you're not actually enjoying the show. So actually, I kind of want you to stop trying to make sex better. Better implies that there's an objective standard that we have to meet and you are failing at meeting it. So instead, I would encourage people to focus on making sex more enjoyable. If you can stop judging the mechanics, you might actually start enjoying the sensations more. But to truly enjoy it, you might have to be willing to let your mind go to some potentially more risky places. And for a lot of couples that I work with, that's pretty terrifying. One of the main reasons you aren't enjoying sex might be because you've forgotten how to play. So think back to when we were 6 or 7. We said and did the most ridiculous things without any care or concern. Like, let's play Star Wars. You're going to be Princess Leia, and I'm going to be Darth Vader, and let's pretend. So one of the things that I get couples that I work with to do is to co-create a space where we can let go some of the very appropriate constraints that being an adult requires us to have when we're not in the bedroom. So at work, we need to be respectful and not impulsive. We need to check our reactions to see if they're appropriate. Now, I'm not saying that we have to turn that off in the bedroom because that could be a whole other issue and video series, but we do need to turn it down because the bedroom is the one place you get a vacation from your values, because eroticism doesn't thrive on safety and fairness. It thrives on power play, the taboo, and being creative. So we first of all need to have an understanding in our relationships that our sexual fantasies are all play, and sharing them is an act of vulnerability, and that means they can't be judged or shamed by the other person. It also means that our partners have the right to say no without shaming you or judging you. They can still say no. Hey baby, I have this idea that we could play doctors and nurses tonight. Seeing you in those medical scrubs is really sexy to me. A doctor? You want me to dress up as a doctor? Tell me exactly what part of dealing with sick people and blood and knives is sexy. That's stupid. Now, you could just say, I'm not so into that, right? You don't have to shame or judge. You can still say no. Being able to share your fantasies about being overpowered or a doctor or a nurse, or a fantasy about dressing up as your bowling team, runs the risk of your internal HR department screaming at you that it's inappropriate, shut it down, don't you dare open your mouth, because if you do, they will run. We're creating this let's pretend space. We're doing make-believe. As long as it stays in that pretend world, everything's great. So you can be a dedicated feminist in the streets and want to be something very different in the bedroom. You can be a gentle pacifist man in real life and want to be a ravaging king in your bedroom play. Outside of the bedroom, it ends there. So your sexual imagination doesn't have to follow the same rules as day-to-day living. Be the boss at work, be a sub in the bedroom. It's all totally fine and okay. If you're trying to be the boss in the bedroom, when really you want to be tied up and told what to do, there is a conflict there. You're not getting what you want. And that's what starts to kill desire and passion. The bedroom is theatre, and it's a playground. And as long as there's consent between the adults in the room, an agreement not to judge what was shared or asked for, and another agreement that it's going to be okay to say a polite no to your partner's requests, we're all good. So fire that HR department, stop trying to be normal, delete that word, find your party gear, slow down on the exit ramp, and for the love of all things good, stop judging the performance and just enjoy the ice cream. Now, there's one final thing that kills a sex life faster than anything else, and it isn't a lack of attraction, it's the hangover from conflict and anger and resentment. Any of those feelings going on will absolutely kill sexy time. If you had a spat on Thursday night about the dishes or money, you could spend Friday being cold to each other, and Saturday, when you finally have time for intimacy, you're still emotionally miles apart because you haven't reconnected. You can't negotiate desire if you haven't negotiated your feelings. So in order to feel connected and close, we really need to resolve ruptures and start repairing things. Then we can start to play. And I've got a lot more to say about conflict and repair if you hit follow and subscribe. And if you want some of my handouts that I give couples all the time in my private practice, the form to give me your email address is below. And if I'm really smart, I'll figure out how to put it up there.